We are in the presence of a design legend, Mr. Benjamin Dimson. Thank you for coming. We are truly honored to be here with you.
Thank you.
And as you can see, you are quite famous. And you have to accept that you do have fans here, even though you don't want the attention. Um, we've gathered some questions. I've gathered some questions from some of my friends here to ask you.
Sure. Please
And
go ahead.
um, we want to we want to start from the beginning.
Okay. Sure.
Like, what was your life like here? So, like, what got you into cars? Like, where did it start?
Okay. Obviously, it started here in Manila. I grew up in Manila. Um, I studied at the Ateneo High School and then moved on to Brent School in Baguio. Um, Went to college at the Adamson University and got exposed to industrial engineering at first. So it was at the Adamson University where I um, I found out that car design existed at the time. So that was the impetus for me to research deeper into car design as a profession. My family and I then migrated to the U.S. In the 70s, and then began my design education at the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. So when I was at Pasadena, upon graduation, I had three offers from three different manufacturers: Ford USA, Volkswagen International, and then just as about I was about to accept the VW offer, the offer from Porsche came by, and you know
You can't
that
resist
was it. You
Porsche.
could resist. Packed my bags. 1 year later, after working for my work visa in the U.S., I picked up two bags and what money I had left, and flew to Germany, and began my career with Porsche.
So, but where did the passion for cars start?
That all started in Manila. Growing up with cars, I played with matchboxes and corgis and Tootsie toys and things like that. And then that moved on into motorcycling. And eventually, as you got older, you know, learned to drive in the Philippines. And that was it. I started working on cars and building. My brothers and I actually built a hot rod when we were in our early college years, late high school. Things like that. Got into drag racing here in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Here in Clark and then in Baguio
In Makati.
In Makati.
and
Drag
Makati
racing
as
in
well.
Makati,
Yes,
Early days.
Well, there was nothing in Makati yet.
yeah. Ayala Avenue and Buendia Avenue.
Wow.
That was it. It's perfect because there was one stoplight right at the gas station, the Shell gas station on Ayala, and that was the drag strip until you got past the movie theater back then.
So, when you got into Porsche, your first project was the Speedster? Was it
No, actually, that car was my first project, the 928
the
S4.
928?
Yeah, the 928 S4 was the first project I was assigned to at Porsche. The 928 S4, the design of the 928 S4's front and rear became the trademark front end for all Porsches to follow. So after the 928 S4, the 944 Turbo was the next project I worked on. And then after the 944 Turbo, um, of course, there were projects in between. It's not like
Yeah.
they're one after the other. And you have to remember that I wasn't the only designer there. So you're competing with other designers that Porsche had brought in. But because of the work that I did on the 928 was so accepted by the design management at the time and by the Porsche family, um, they made me responsible for a lot of the development of the design projects that followed, the production cars.
So the
So after the 944 Turbo, um, uh, Porsche started developing the 959, the 959 Group B. The 959 Group B was initially created to be strictly a homologated racer for Le Mans. No? And so Porsche had to produce a minimum of 200 or 300 cars for homologation in the race. So the 959 was developed, and after the 959 was developed, then moved on to other projects in Porsche's lineup, like the
964.
964. Yeah, so the 964 was one of the last projects I worked on. There was a brief period before I moved to Mercedes where I worked on or contributed to the Panamericana. The Panamericana was that off-road
Yes.
911 that was developed.
So with the 964, and there are many people who think that you just literally carried over the G model design to the 964, but I'm sure it's a lot more complicated than that. So could you run us through your design process for the
For
964?
the 964, yeah, okay. Sure. After the development of the 959, Porsche was looking for a way to adapt the technology that was created for the 959 to introduce it into their standard cars. So the 964 Carrera was the introduction of four-wheel drive, the new suspension systems that Porsche was developing at the time. So the 964 Carrera was the first production car to actually embody a lot of the development that took place on the 959.
So you had to carry over the windshield and the doors, right?
Of the
so-
964, yeah,
so
because
how
it's
did you-
still based off of the original 911.
Yes.
So the body in white is basically the structure of the car that holds the hood, the roof, and the rear fender without the doors and the front fenders. So that piece of metalwork is maintained throughout the years, and then minor changes are made to bumpers, fenders, and things like that.
So with the 964, what was your original? Let's say that you didn't have to carry over anything. What was your vision for the 964? Let's say
Uh-huh.
without the regulations.
Okay. Well, if I was given free reign to redesign the car, I would have changed a lot more on the car. Beginning with possibly the roof line, the fenders at the front, um, the bumpers, of course, and the wheels. No, you have to bear in mind that as the 964 evolved from the 911 SC, Porsche introduced new suspension geometries, a far more powerful engine. They were already beginning to think about water cooling certain parts of the engine so that the car would actually produce more power. So a lot of those were taken into consideration when the 964 was being developed.
Even the side mirrors, you were telling us.
Yes, yeah. The side mirrors too were a big part of the redesign because it was one of the most inexpensive ways to gain a higher top end through aerodynamics. So reducing the frontal area of the mirror actually helped the car to go faster at top end.
What's your dynamic with the aerodynamics team, the engineering team? Like, how do you get to produce a design that you want without interfering with the targets that they want to hit?
Well, it's balance. You have to balance the engineering with the design, but always keep in mind that Porsche is foremost an engineering company. So design almost plays a secondary role. And that's part of the reason that I was not able to make as many changes on the 964 as I would have wanted. No? So most of the budget went into the performance side of the car rather than the aesthetic, sides of the car. No?
When designing the 959, because it's very aerodynamically
Right.
capable, so like, what was the what is the relationship between you guys? Were you all excited to work together, or
Of course, of course. It's not every day that you can redesign a Porsche from the ground up, where you redesign everything. The 959, I think the only thing we held was the door. Everything else was changed. No,
from the ground up?
yeah, from the ground up. The hood was moved up, the trunk was completely changed, the roof was modified through shaving. No, yeah.
Well, thank you for bringing that wonderful creation into this world. We're truly
Well,
grateful.
I'm just very appreciative of the fact that the cars do have a very strong following. As a designer, that is probably the most rewarding compliment a designer can have for the work that we put into it, is when people like yourselves go out there, collect them, cherish them, drive them, and that's for me is why you put all your efforts into designing these cars.
What is your design process like? Do you start anywhere? Do you have like a tradition? Do you have a routine? Do you have a
Yeah, I have my personal design philosophy, if you want to call it that, and it all goes back to my training at Art Center. When I was at Art Center, I became a follower of the Bauhaus school of thought, and the Bauhaus promotes less is more when it comes to design. So you don't really need to redesign everything to come up with something new. You have to be very precise and targeted in how you make those changes. And sometimes those changes can be extremely subtle, but they make a tremendous difference.
Yes,
If you look,
absolutely.
for example, at the difference on the 928's front end compared to the original front end, by making the front end more like the 356, in essence, it completely changed the character and made it more Porsche-like than the first one ever was. No? So that's the sort of thing that you try to capture. As a designer, you're a problem solver. No? You're a problem solver first. And so my approach is always to break down the problem into smaller bits so that you can come up with a bigger master plan at the end. It's much easier to tackle when you tackle certain elements first, and then try and develop the bigger picture from that.
So, do you find it easier to design a car from scratch, or to just
Yeah,
to revise
that
an
is
existing?
it depends who you ask. My history has been primarily with redesigning things at Porsche. You know, um, to some degree, that was maybe the reason I made myself available to others. When I got when I reached the point at Porsche where I think I could go no further, then I thought I need to search for other challenges. No?
So this brings us to your stint with Mercedes-Benz.
Yes, yeah. Mercedes-Benz hired me away from Porsche after the 964 program.
Well, you left a good legacy with Porsche.
Pardon?
You left a good legacy with Porsche.
Well, I hope so. No, and I think your appreciation of the cars that I did at the time is evidence of that. So I'm grateful to you guys.
So, in relation to Mercedes, you're telling us when we met the other day that which car was the most enjoyable for you to design? It was the
When we met, there was a research vehicle that Mercedes-Benz was working on that was based off the SLK 63. And what we did was use the components of the SLK and put it into an open-wheel roadster. Now, so no roof, you climb into the car, much like a Formula One car. So it's a two-seater, um, somewhat in the vein of a Donkerboard or a Lotus Super 7 with the Mercedes bodywork. I think that for me was probably the most challenging and enjoyable because it expressed the sort of driving that I actually wanted to do in a car. It's purely a Sunday car for fun. You take it out on the open roads if you get a chance to, or if you have the opportunity, take it to a track and have fun. So it's like a Formula One car for the road, but you could almost drive it daily if if we had designed a roof for it, which we didn't, of course. But it was purely a research vehicle. We were testing new technologies that were going to go into the SLK, and so we created this roadster where it had no radiators in front. They were mounted behind the front wheels, and then you climbed over these pods to get into the interior.
yeah. I think they will be seeing it later through your presentation.
Yeah. I think if we show them the portfolio a little later,
Yes.
they'll get a
we'll-
glimpse of it.
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
So the
One of the things that made me want to become a designer is the enjoyment of driving. And very few cars will really give you that enjoyment, that will give you a smile on your face all day when you're driving it. The feeling of the steering wheel,
Yes.
the brakes, the shifting, the engine sound. There's a handful of cars that really, really touch your soul when you're driving them. No? And especially if any of you've ever had the opportunity to drive sports cars in Europe, that driving experience is phenomenal.
yes,
The open road, very, very little traffic, and the speeds that you can reach are just exciting. No?
So what are the cars that you like to drive? Like
911s, of course, no? Alphas, no? Ferraris. Can't say no to a Ferrari when they run.
when they
No.
run, yes.
Yeah. Let's see what else. There's been a few Japanese cars that are really good to drive as well.
So with Mercedes-Benz, the first project they gave you was the Cabrio.
Yes, the 124 Cabriolet was the first project that I was not really the designer. I was more of a project manager for that program.
So
Because the Cabrio is basically you cut off the roof.
yeah,
You take it off and then you design parts to enclose it.
to reinforce.
So that wasn't a really big design challenge, but the challenge was in managing how those changes got translated into hardware. The safety roll bar behind the,
and the
the
reinforcements.
interior, the
for sure,
reinforcements,
yeah.
the cars, and all that.
So what is the first Mercedes that you really had full initiative on?
Initiative on. That was probably Mercedes-Benz had a minivan program that they were going to develop based on the 124 or the 210. So Mercedes-Benz was following the trends in the U.S. and minivans were a big trend. And Mercedes-Benz was, toying with the idea of having a minivan in their lineup. However, they never built it. No? And then while I was at Mercedes, Audi hired me away from Porsche to join their advanced design group in Munich. And they brought me there to design another minivan for them. No? And they didn't build it as well. So then I decided to, got to move on from these minivans. I was able to contribute to the development of the Avos show car. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but it was an aluminum-bodied streamliner that was used as a show car with a W12 engine at the time that later became the base engine for Bugattis. No? Um, so I contributed to that program. But my stay with Audi was very brief. I was there for 3 months. The people in the empire, I should say, in Sindelfingen realized, oh, where's Dimson? And I go, oh, he left. They go, hey, bring him back, bring him back. We need him. We need to send him to California. So they brought me back to Mercedes, and they made me the the head of design for Mercedes-Benz in the United States. So I became the chief designer and the assistant general manager for Mercedes-Benz Advanced Design in California for a little over 30 years. So
So actually, when you were running us through your design portfolio, we were impressed by. There's so many cars that we didn't know that you had a say on. So I think it's the W220 was also.
yes, yeah, 220 S-Class, the 203. Um, there's quite a few more. No? I think it's better to show you in pictures
Yes.
for me to try and remember all the
Yeah. Yeah.
W this, W that, X. Mercedes-Benz has such a confusing,
Yes.
alphabet soup of numbers and letters to designate their cars. There used to be Mercedes-Benz would have the numbers ahead of the letters, and then a new boss came around and says, "No, I prefer it the other way around." So we put the letters ahead of the numbers, and you know, you have to remember that Mercedes-Benz it's a huge conglomerate. Back then, Mercedes-Benz it was into defense industries, it was into shipping, it was into trucks, all manner of other industries, above and beyond the cars. So its corporate structure was very different from that of Porsche. Porsche was a very small, family-run business back then compared to Mercedes.
And you must have been difficult having to deal with the Germans, especially not knowing how to speak German.
Well, that was one of the biggest hurdles I had, even at Porsche, and that's why I made it a goal to learn German as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and
I needed to be fluent, read, write, speak.
actually, I'd want to talk about your wife also because I think people should know how important Cheryl's role in Porsche was.
Porsche, yes, yeah. Yeah, my wife, I met my wife in school, in college. She was in the graphics department. And when I was at Porsche, I found out that Tony Lupin, the director of design at Porsche at the time, was experimenting with bringing in a graphic designer for Porsche to help them with nomenclature, advertising, car shows, and things like that. So my wife joined Porsche as well, and her contributions range from all the scripts that you see on the cars, turbo, Carrera, Speedster. That's all her work. All the stuff that goes on the fenders, the crest on the hood is her work. She did a lot of the packaging for the Porsche parts, and she did all the car shows and all the special events back then for Porsche.
Liveries as well.
She did race car graphics as well. Rothmans, Shell, Blaupunkt. There's quite a few because depending on the year or the car, so mostly the 962 at the time.
Wonderful.
Yeah, for the Group C. And then when the 959 started racing, that was there too. And then the 951s, were also raced. So she had a hand in some of the liveries. 951 is the 944 turbo. Yeah, that's the internal designation for the
Oh.
944 turbo.
Interesting.
Sorry.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So
Actually, this is a 965.
Yes, the 964 turbo is the 965. There was a different 965, just for the record, that would have been far more outreaching than this one. It would have been closer to the 959 than this one is. But budgetary constraints left it to this. It's still a supercar, though.
so even these this is the turbo 3.6, right? So
Right.
so for every rendition of the 964, you were the one who designed it. So let's say you're the one who designed how wide the fender
Yes, yeah.
be. Let's say for the
Yeah.
turbo. And
The
then-
Turbo, the Carrera, the Speedster. No? The Speedster was originally conceived as a 964. However, before the introduction of the 964 at the Frankfurt Auto Show, just to increase sales, they decided to introduce the Speedster on the 911 SC.
Mhm.
Because they didn't want the 911 SC to lose sales with the introduction of the 964. Because Porsche fans, when something new gets introduced, they all bolt to that new thing and then they abandon the old. So it was one way to preserve or increase the life of the 911 SC line. Yeah.
So it must have been a real challenge to revive the Speedster name, because you set the design for the models that came out until now. Even the latest models still use that same
That same
design.
feeling.
So,
Yeah.
so how was that process? Like how?
I think that was more accidental than anything, you know. Again, I refer to this, as the impetus for all that, and I think the the designers that followed after me, they picked up on the same cues based on the direction of management. It's not the designers who get to pick what we do. We have a management that tells us, oh, we like this, especially the Porsche family. Of all the car companies I've worked for, the Porsche family is very involved in the development of the cars. Whenever a new model is presented, all the Porsche family members show up, and then they get final say on, yes, we like that front, or yes, we like that badge, or this. They're very
Hands-on.
hands-on in that regard.
It's incredible.
Do you think if you had to create one more variant, do you think that Safari version now would work as a
The Safari version. Oh, you mean as an off-roader, an off-road version? Yeah, but perhaps I don't know. I'm sometimes I'm conflicted when you use a car for off-roading purposes, because the function has to fit the driving. No, by that I mean the position of the driver relative to the vehicle. And when you're in a car, you sit low, so you don't have good visibility. You want a vehicle that puts you higher up on the ground and a different architecture so that you have a better visibility. Therefore, SUVs, I think, are better suited for this, no, than a car is. However, when you look at a car that's been designed for Dakar, for example, where it's almost buggy-like, if it was designed, you can design it more aesthetically, for that purpose. Kind of like the Panamericana, along those lines. No? Yeah, you could. But I think for me to get involved in something like that, it would depend on the brief, what it is, what is the goal for the car, who the user. That's the way I work. I like to think of it as a design problem that is in need of a serious solution, rather than just oh, I can just change it and that's it.
So what are your views on electrification? It's like about the cars nowadays, the way they're designed, the way they're.
Yeah, well, I think it's inevitable that electric cars will have a significant role in our everyday lives. For pollution control, but also for the introduction of autonomous driving. Autonomous driving is the simplest solution that the car industry can put together to solve issues with congestion. No? Uh, Manila is a perfect example of where that might be very successful. There's also the aspect where people's relations to their cars have been evolving over time. The car is less of a object of desire. It's become more an object of necessity, because it's a product that takes you from point A to point B. Now, mind you, you have to keep in mind that sports cars are a completely different thing. It's like horses. Horses had a function in society. No? But those workhorses are gone. What remains are race horses, sport horses. No, I think the same will happen for cars in the future. Now, future is what? 3 years ahead, 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead. No, so as a visionary, I like to think, 10, 20, 30 years ahead. No, be advanced enough to keep ahead of the technology without losing track of what's possible technologically. So you have to make projections based on the problems that we have today. You're not going to solve them in 2 or 3 years, especially things like congestion. You have to project 15, 20 years in advance as to how you're going to do that. So as far as cars are concerned, I see a point in time where you do have a lot of electric cars, but also you're probably going to be buying memberships for your transportation. So on-demand transportations like Uber, rideshare, and all that. And for that, you use electric vehicles. You won't need to own a car for that purpose anymore. You keep your sports car in a special place that will take you to the provinces where you can enjoy it outside of the city. But within the city, you pay for a membership and you order the kind of car you want. I want a luxury car. I want a van. I want whatever it is you're going to transport. You're going to transport people. You order that on your phone and it arrives at your door, and that takes you from point A to point B. So the concept of ownership will be based on for mobility. No? Is in my mind is going to change. So that's where I'm thinking: how do you provide mobility to millions and millions of people in a very, very congested area? Because you cannot go on just one car per person. You do not have enough real estate for parking, uh, you know, and keep it affordable. There will always be people who obviously can afford more than others, but for the average person, I think that's the solution for the future because it helps with congestion.
All right. So, if in relation to modernity and modernization, what are your views on restoration modification, restomods, like Singer, Gunther Works?
Done right, I think they're a compliment to the original designer, because they found a way to make what it is you did even more beautiful in some cases. So I have no reservations or about Restomods. They're exploring with things that you created and then trying to take them further. Some are more successful than others, but yeah, it's with cars. cars are an expression of your personality. It's up to the customer to take his car to whatever level he wants to. I mean, as a designer, of course, you want to see your cars preserved, but it's more important that the customer who buys your car is happy with their product. And if a resto mod does that for your customer, then that's great. Um, some I prefer over others, of course, but then that's just a matter of taste.
So would you make one of your own? Let's say you had a chance to bring the 964 to life again with your own rendition. Would you take the opportunity? Would you?
I would consider the opportunity if it was an exercise in trying to create an art object more so than a production run of cars. No? I think as far as production run of cars, I think that's better handled by other people. As far as I'm concerned, I'll do one. I've gotten to the point where I need to uh, think back and care for my family, and putting cars behind me and letting the next generation of hot designers take over. But to do a one-off that's an art piece or a collector piece, yeah, I'd consider that.
We hope that happens. But
I will leave that up to you guys.
we'll leave it up to Alfred.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. So let's say you're no longer with Mercedes now, and you're doing consultancy work now. You have your own firm now. Right?
Yes, yeah, but even that I've winded down. After retiring from Mercedes Benz, I held a consultancy where I did work for Alois Roof, and I maintained a very good design relationship with Horatio Pagani, but not to design for him, to just exchange ideas and talk about design and where are we going with the future. Designers love to hypothesize about the future. So, and I enjoy working with people like Horatio Pagani, who are extremely creative, but he also has a very technical background. Yeah.
So
And
did
Alois Roof is the same. He's a consummate car guy. He might be getting a little older and kind of moving on, but his passion is still based on the 911 and Porsche, and taking those Porsches to the next level of performance.
so did any of these ideas come to fruition?
With either of them, no. I think they're still in the drawing board or the planning stages.
All right.
All these people doing tributes to the original 964 design. Which one do you appreciate the most? Who has done good work on a reimagination of your rendition of your work?
Well, I could see reimagining any one of them because they're like your children, all of them. As a father, you shouldn't pick a favorite, right?
That's true.
It's hard, but of course, the 911 is so special because it is the purest, and the most original of all the Porsches in its lineup, including the 928 and the 944 Turbo. But as a design statement, I think the 928 as a piece of mobile sculpture, it's just gorgeous. No, it's just beautiful. No?
Same.
Yeah, as a shape. No?
Have a series one.
Yeah, I mean,
928.
you look at it today, and then you look at those fenders, that front fender, and you go, wow, it still looks modern. You can appreciate it. It's timeless. No, so from that regard, yeah.
And if you had a few more years in your, let's say, rewind a couple of years, still had some design energy, which company would you dream that you still had one more stint?
Well, Ferrari was always in my sights. When before I went to Audi, I actually interviewed with Ferrari. Very nearly landed the job with them. If I landed the job with them, I never would have gone back to Mercedes. I would have stuck with
What year was that during? What could have been?
probably 89, 90. No?
About the time of the Testarossa, the TR
Yes, yeah.
coming together,
Mhm.
the end of the Testarossa into the 355.
Right, yeah. Into the 355 era, yeah.
How would you, if you came in there? I mean, we have a 355 outside, but
Mhm.
if you shot in, how would you design that 355 differently from what it is today? What would you use?
Yeah, I think I would proportion it differently. And then the forms that I would introduce would be more rounded or more, one of my favorite Ferraris is the Dino and the 250 short wheelbase Ferrari from the 60s.
Yeah.
I just love that car.
You would bring that back.
That feeling.
Yeah.
But I would treat it in a way that it wouldn't look classic.
Yeah.
No.
That's pretty interesting to see and hear how you would have approached that differently.
Mhm. Yeah, because everybody, it's like being a chef in a kitchen. You have a different way of combining certain ingredients to create that dish that you want to serve your climate, so your clients. No?
And from the
So-
355 to the 360, how do you feel that transition was? Like, was that
Mhm.
the right
I thought that
way?
was pretty extreme. Yeah, it is the right way, but it's in the execution of details where I think the 360 somewhat, because
It
proportionally,
is a bit that rounded that you were,
right.
you were mentioning.
The 355 had pretty nice proportions. No?
Yeah.
Like I really love the 288 GTO. No? That thing is just
Who-
there for me. The proportions worked. No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think on that note, I think we will.
Yeah, or else this will go on forever.
Yeah, this will go on
you gotta,
forever.
You gotta stop
Yeah.
us from.
So thank you
Good.
for really taking time to
Mhm.
speak to us,
Well,
connect with us.
Thank you for the invitation, and this is a tremendous honor to be able to meet some of you and to be able to share my past. To those of you who are interested. So, thank you. I thank you.
Yeah,
So-
thank you for being that inspiration.
Thank you. Thank you all.